Hello, Happy New Year Britain, and hopefully it's going to be a very happy new year for British children, because the British people are going to stand up for our children and we're going to stand up for their rights, and we're going to support the child protection directives for children. And here's the child protection directives. Without these, the Jimmy Saviles of this world are going to get away with their crimes forever. Okay? According to child protection directives, which are also fully supported by the United Nations Child Protection Committee, when a child reports sexual abuse or any other crimes against them and others, that child's testimony is evidence, okay, that needs immediately acting upon. Now, to explain exactly what I'm talking about here, this story started with a vague tip-off, and police responded to that vague tip-off. They investigated and ended up finding a boat, which was the largest drug bust in UK history, to find 500 million in narcotics. Okay? So, that's what investigating a vague tip-off can bring. This child, I can't show you his face because apparently it's illegal to show children who've been abused faces. It's alright to show children advertising McDonald's and what have you, but you're not allowed to see a child's face of abuse, because apparently we've got to respect the shame and guilt a child feels, an abused child feels. No, actually we don't. We don't need to respect the shame and guilt of a child that's been abused, because it's unacceptable. A child should not be carrying any shame and guilt for suffering crimes that an adult has perpetrated against them. Our duty is to delete the shame and guilt, to face it openly and honestly, face the abuse, the crimes, and give the child support and help them to lose their shame and guilt within an honest and open society. And that's why Sabine McNeill here has been advocating open justice and campaigning against family court secrecy, because actually it's being used mostly to protect the identities and crimes of child abusers, and especially those who are operating within positions of high public authority in Britain. Now, according to the HAMPSTEAD case, which I've discussed at length in other videos, and this child is one of the witnesses and also his sister. This is his mum. And anybody who looks through these videos, I'll leave you the links, will instantly recognise the little boy. He gives descriptions of how his dad's got pictures of him doing sex to him when he was a little baby. He's got them stored on his computer. He's got all them pictures on his computer. He tells this police officer that in this interview. He also tells the police officer in this interview of how his dad gives him alcohol, how the alcohol makes him feel. He also talks about how his dad gives him white powder to sniff, but he keeps it in a big bag, and also he puts some out of the big bag into lots of little bags, see-through plastic bags. So there, you know, besides the story of satanic abuse, which the police said was unbelievable, you do have evidence of crimes that at least your average police officer can actually relate to, related to drug use, sale of drugs, and also making and distribution of child pornography. Okay. Now, the police, despite the fact that medical evidence fully confirmed the children's allegations that they'd been repeatedly anally raped by multiple professional adults who were teachers, doctors, nurses, CAFCAS officers, police officers, business people, you name it. 175 adults named. And then many of those suspects, their genitals described in detail. And anyone listening to this video will hear the child talk about how when the police officer quizzes him about how the drugs make him feel, he has difficulty remembering the word sneeze. Okay? He's saying, it's like a cough, but I don't know, I can't remember the word. You know, it makes you go, achoo. And the police officer says, you mean sneeze? And yes, that's it, sneeze. It makes you sneeze when I have to sniff this white powder up my nose. And yet, a child who can't remember the word sneeze, we're being told, has been coached to remember not just the details related to drug and alcohol use, not just the stuff about child pornography on his father's computer, but also detailed descriptions of killing babies and all the other details that the children give. Apparently an 8-year-old child who can't remember the word sneeze has somehow, while on cannabis, apparently, been able to memorise all the other details that he disclosed in home recordings and to police officers. Okay. And that itself is evidence. The fact that a child who is suggested to have been coached to memorise these allegations is a child who is not at the level, is only 8, that his vocabulary skills are not at the level yet that he can remember the word sneeze. He also has trouble remembering the word Velcro, you know. So, and also in this interview you will notice that at every point this police officer is trying to negate or discredit what the child is saying to him. You know, when the child says, my dad's been doing this to me since I was a baby, it's like, what, you can remember from when you was a baby? You know. So it's very, very, very serious when you've got a whole establishment in central London, when you've got your social services, your police, the local children's commissioner, the council, the High Court, the family courts, even the bloody BBC, all colluding together to deny the validity of these children's rights to justice, the justice that is provided by child protection directives. I don't care what you think about the EU, okay? Not everything that comes out of the EU is bad, but at the end of the day, these child protection directives work, and that's why Britain won't implement them. And as I say, until we get them implemented, there's no hope for child abuse victims in Britain, because every single time the police will fail to investigate. Okay, Mr. Justice Peter Jackson, a senior family court judge, has revealed that when victims are told their crimes are unsubstantiated, it often means the police have failed to investigate the allegations, because apparently a child's witness testimony does not have the same credibility as a vague tip-off from a member of the public. And until we break this, the Jimmy Saviles of the world are free to come and go as they fucking please. And I'm sorry if I've offended you by using the word fuck, but that is what we're dealing with here, fuckers. And I will always call them fuckers, because that is what they are. And it's not a swear word, it's not a blasphemy to just call a spade, okay? And we need to get rid of them, because the same people that will permit the scale, the industrial scale, and again that is described in the UN report for Britain in 2014, July 2014, that was published widely throughout Britain by order of the UN in order to raise public and authority awareness and vigilance in addressing the crimes against children, that it is endemic. We're talking about an industry here. The UN state categorically that thousands of children are being trafficked into Britain every year, specifically for every kind of abuse. The UN reports state categorically that hundreds of those trafficked children are being murdered in ritual, pseudo-religious sacrifices. So, you know, even if the police were saying, well, we found it really incredible that, you know, children could, you know, talk about satanic abuse, it's obviously a fantasy. At the end of the day, we know that people use and sell drugs, and we know that people do buy, make and sell child pornography. And those allegations were included in what the police later claimed were fantasy crimes. Now, this is an extract from the police's submission to London courts in December 2014, when the mother applied for a judicial review into the case after police had refused to investigate and closed the case down, saying that there was, you know, not it was all a fantasy, and they challenged the mother's request for a judicial review. Okay. And they actually tried to prosecute Miss Wilson, Kylie Wilson, who was and who is an ex-police officer who helped the mother and who the mother consulted before she took her children to the police after they had reported all the allegations, disclosed them to herself and her partner. So, you know, basically they're saying that the investigation was absolutely secure. They're saying at present, whilst investigation into the children's allegations of satanic and abuse and murder has ended, an investigation is ongoing into possible sexual abuse against the children. The available medical evidence has revealed anal scarring on the children, but it is not clear at this stage that caused the injury. So the police are saying, well, yeah, the kids have made these statements, you know, we don't really believe them, and we're not really sure if anal scarring was the cause of, was caused by anal sexual abuse. And later on, the police do actually discredit the medical evidence by claiming that both children have anal scarring due to a very large solid poo. Okay. And, you know, they go on to say the allegations of satanic and sexual abuse, murder and the cooking of children were by their very nature extremely improbable. Okay. The children have withdrawn the allegations. The physical evidence clearly did not support such claims. The investigation into such allegations has not ceased due to bias, but due to proper consideration of the evidence. This decision was clearly lawful. Well, was it really? Because actually the nature of the allegations of satanic abuse and murder and cooking of children are not extremely improbable according to the UN Child Protection Report for Britain and according to past and proven cases. For example, in 2013, we have nearly 400 children rescued and 348 adults arrested in Canadian child pornography bust. You know, and what was most alarming, Inspector Bevan Desjardins said, was that many of the arrests were of people who worked with or closely interacted with children. Among those arrested were 40 school teachers, 9 doctors and nurses, 6 law enforcement personnel, 9 pastors and priests, and 3 foster parents, she said. Okay. So here we have the letter from the mother's solicitor who wrote to the IPCC on the mother's behalf making a complaint. And, you know, I must say the IPCC have upheld the complaint, and they upheld that complaint after the High Court judgment of 2015 that said the allegations were false and were in part coached and part a fantasy that judgment is now void, because the IPCC, months after that judgment was made, have written to the local authorities asking very serious questions, asking why arrest criteria was when it was fully satisfied, no arrests were made, why crime scenes weren't preserved or forensically investigated, why CCTV footage wasn't examined, and blah blah blah. So basically the High Court judgment can be chucked in the bin for the piece of rubbish that it really is, because it is an abomination of the child protection directives, because the judgment rests entirely on the children's, what we now very lawfully suspect as being coerced retractions. That is basically what the court case amounts to, the evidence that the judge made her judgment on. And since EU child protection directives do not support retractions for closing down a case, then all we're left with is the word of the father saying, "I am innocent." And that is basically what the present case judgment is solely relying on, is the father saying, "I didn't do it." And because he's the only one that actually appeared in court out of 175 other named and known and genitally identified witnesses, he's the only one that was actually appeared in court. And when the judge found him completely innocent on nothing more than his word, and actually illegal, very dubious, only partial, shoddy retractions, that is a travesty of justice. That is an abomination of justice. And that does mean that there is now a green light for anybody to do what they like to children, whatever they please they can do, because nobody's going to bat an eyelid about it. Nobody's going to say anything about it. Everybody's going to turn away. Nobody wants to think about it, because it's too horrible, isn't it? Well, you know what? Your society is getting really, really horrible. It's getting so horrible that cancer patients who've only got 8 or 9 months to live are being told that they've got to go to work until they've got only 6 months to live. You've got a society that is prosecuting cancer patients who live longer than 6 months for fraud, for claiming benefits and claiming that they only had 6 months to live. You've got people, disabled people and sick people, being kicked out of the family homes, being kicked out of their homes because, there's been an extra bedroom tax imposed on them. You've got a society where our young people can't get social security. They're being forced to work for their job seekers allowance. In other words, they're used as slave labour to earn money for multinational corporations who can employ them free of charge and actually get a subsidy off the government for doing that, while the worker themselves only get £72 a week. We're living in a system of austerity that is imposing austerity on us. Well, the kind of people that can impose austerity on a population on the strength of criminal bankers is the kind of consciousness, that benefits, enjoys abusing children. They are a sadistic consciousness. And, as Justice Jackson says, these people, the police are not investigating. They're just not investigating. And here we have, the reasons why. Because the police are going to always find an excuse not to bother to investigate, because it seems that they're more concerned with protecting high-profile paedophiles that are involved in these rings. And this is the statement of Kylie Wilson, who was the ex-police officer of the Metropolitan Police Service in London, who supported the mother and children, who they consulted. She consulted her before she took the children to the police, because the children had included the police among their abusers. you know. And, you know, the one thing that gives me faith and support is that I know that the Metropolitan Police aren't all full of paedophiles. That I know the Metropolitan Police largely, probably most of them, I just would find it abhorrent, the travesty of this case. But so many of them are working under duress. And if they start asking questions, they get the sack. So we've got to support them, you know. And I've recently discovered there's the Christian Metropolitan Police, you know, and they've given me such hope and faith now, you know, that I really feel that they are going to be key in addressing all the issues that I'm raising here in relation to a child's right to be believed, and that a child's testimony has to be taken as evidence. Yes, it's true that children do lie, but invariably a child that has lied will be discovered. The lies will be uncovered. Children don't usually make very good liars, and it's often easy to prove that they're lying. For example, the children in this case had described their teachers, say, genitals, which they had. They described piercings, tattoos, birthmarks, warts, red dots over Mr. So-and-so's willy. Okay? They described those things. So therefore, that's evidence, because they've given an exact description of something that normally the child would not, in any normal circumstances, have seen. And so that is very powerful evidence that immediately the police should have gone and rescued those named and known suspects. Let's face it, they were working in that local community, in the local school and church. So they're easy to track down, easy to identify, easy to arrest, easy to get them into a medical examination to examine their genitals. Have you got tattoos? No, you haven't. That aspect of the child's story isn't true. Oh, we've just also seized the dad's computer. Has he got child pornography on his computer? Yes, actually he has. We've got a photograph of him here doing sex to his little boy when he was a baby. Oh, so that part's true then. You see, this attitude that you can dismiss all the aspects of a child's disclosure, again, has to be cast aside. I think that, you know, although the police here are talking about it's extremely improbable that, you know, satanic abuse and cooking children is extremely improbable, though not according to the UN and not according to crimes reported by children. It's not highly improbable that people buy large quantities of drugs, put them into smaller plastic bags and then sell them, is it? It's not highly improbable that people do buy, make and sell child pornography, is it? So again, this submission here by the police asking Justice Porthley to deny the mother's judicial review, which indeed she did. That's why the mum had to go public after that, because she was denied a judicial review to get the case properly investigated. And remember, this is a mother who herself has been accused now of abusing and coaching her children to repeat the most horrific lies. And yet here she is, before the case went public, really trying her best to get the case reopened. What, she wanted it reopened to incriminate herself? And you know what's even more disturbing is that this mother, Ella Draper, you know, we're told that she's maliciously persecuted the father for years, which actually she hasn't. The evidence and the criminal records of the fathers show conclusively he repeatedly harassed, assaulted, battered and intimidated his wife, his partner and his children. Okay. So we're being told that she has coached her children to lie about the father in order to stop him from getting access for the children, and so she can take them abroad to live in Russia. Now, believe that as you will. Some women, I know there are women out there who will maliciously tell lies to hurt an ex-partner, just as I know there are men out there that will do that. You know, there's nasty people who will do such things. But in this mother's case, she's shown no evidence other than she really cares for her children, she loves them, and she's tried her best to protect them. And not just her own children, but other children as well. Because when the children disclosed to her while they were abroad on holiday, she did have a chance then to not return back to Britain and go to Russia, and she could have just explained it all there. But instead she was concerned about the other children that the children had mentioned, 72 named children, and of course the trafficked babies. And despite her partner trying to persuade her otherwise, she said, no, I'm going back to Britain, I'm going to get some professional advice, and I'm going to report this to the police, I'm going to take the children to the police. And that's exactly what she did. Now, is it likely then, let's suppose that this woman, who to all intents and purposes, for externally at least, she's a decent woman, she's professional, she's a nutritionist, yoga expert, she is vegan, she doesn't drink, smoke or take drugs, okay? So she wants to incriminate the dad and stop him from having access because she's got this madness in her about him, okay? But is she also going to persuade her children to confess themselves to murdering and eating trafficked babies and drinking their blood? Regardless of what maliciousness a mother feels towards her ex-partner, is she going to coach her children to force them to confess to murdering babies? Is she going to force them to memorise lies about cutting a baby's head off, to incriminate themselves as well as their dad and all the other members of the community? And this is a very important point, because it's the probability factor. It's not probable that a mum, in trying to incriminate the dad, will also force her children, abusively coach them to also incriminate themselves. And then, even when she gets nowhere at all with that, after months and months and months, and even she's lost contact, she's lost full custody of her children and is limited to twice monthly contact. Even after that, she's trying to get this case through. And then when everything fails, she turns to the public for help. And unknown parties, because we really don't know who uploaded the videos, because, I mean, this is a police video. So we really don't know who uploaded the videos, all the videos onto the internet. But they did get uploaded. And she still has stood by her story. What, she wanted the whole world to know that her children, the false reality, so-called, that her children had murdered babies? It's one thing to try and use children to incriminate an ex-partner, but it's quite another thing to force, to, you know, be suspected of using your own children, of forcing them to incriminate themselves and to confess to a crime of murder. And not just one murder, hundreds, the little girl says, hundreds of babies. You know, and again, get online, have a look at the videos. I know it's a horrible subject, but you know what? You're going to have to steel yourself, because little kids are having to live this for their reality. So no matter how horrible it is for you to think about, get a backbone, for goodness sake. Kids are having to live this. Never mind just think about it. At least you can go and have your cup of tea and turn off and go and watch something after. But I am asking you now, you know, your children need you. Our children need us. The child needs a human being. The human child. And this is what we're talking about here, is raising the human child. And who is taking control of the human child? Who is abusing the human child so that they're growing up into damaged adults? The next generation is very, very, very important. Without the next generation, there is no future. You know, we need to get rid of this family court secrecy because it's protecting child abusers. Fact. That's a fact. It's protecting child abusers. And the HAMPSTEAD case proves it absolutely conclusively, as does the Holly Gregg case, which I've only just started to unravel the intricacies of that case, and I've realised again it's another huge cover-up. It's been going on a lot longer than the HAMPSTEAD case, and it involves the authorities of Scotland, who have equally complicit in covering up and refusing to prosecute. And again, that involves murder as well. You know. And there's other cases that have come through as well. You know, a young girl from Hull managed to escape and seek asylum in America after being part of a child sex abuse gang in Britain that her own parents were involved in. You know, the abuse she describes is absolutely horrendous. You know, children being forced to run through woods and being repeatedly raped by paedophiles that were in the woods as well, and children being murdered. She describes it all in detail. And she's only 20, and she's talking about Hull as a child. So, you know, this is a nationwide thing, and it is going on rampantly because people are ignoring it. A lot of people are complicit, or the coerced, or the threatened, or the blackmailed, or whatever it is. But for whatever reason, because those people are like that, the rest of us are going to have to open our mouths, because there's a lot of other people who can't open their mouths, and until we open our mouths and make a huge fuss about it, everybody's going to stay quiet. And nothing's going to come out of this IICSA. And there's going to be no child protection directives. Because according to child protection directives, onus of proof is on the suspects, because a child's evidence is evidence. A child's testimony is taken a lot more seriously even than the vague tip-off. You know, when an 8-year-old child tells a police officer, describes in great detail how his dad gives him cocaine, how it makes him feel, how the dad stores it in a big bag and how he puts it into little small see-through bags as well, and how his dad's got pictures of him on a computer. That's not a vague tip-off from an 8-year-old. That is evidence, and it should have immediately been investigated. Regardless of anything else that the children had said, those are two crimes that should have immediately been investigated. And from there on in, then they might have been able to substantiate the other crimes. But as it was, no crime scenes were investigated apart from one, 8 days after the children's allegations and after suspects had all been well informed in advance and had had plenty of time to conceal evidence. And some of it may be permanently sealed now. But according to justice, arrest criteria was fully satisfied and the children did not receive justice. You know, and this is, you know, like I say, from the mum's solicitor's letter. Arrest criteria was satisfied. Nobody was arrested. And yet the police are saying that decision was clearly lawful. Was it lawful? Is it lawful then to leave children at risk? That is what we need to ask ourselves. Is that lawful? Is it lawful using secret family courts to cover up criminal activities? To remove children, abuse children from parents and take control of them so that their abusers can remain free and at liberty to abuse more children? How many children does a social worker come into contact with? The children name social workers as their abusers who were involved in baby trafficking. What? You're not alarmed about that? You don't think that's a terrorist threat? That you've got social workers operating in Britain who have direct access to women's babies, who actually turn up in hospitals with 5 police officers to remove a baby at birth? And then nobody knows what happens to that baby after, because 200 of them a year go missing off social work records. 200 up to babies a year go missing from social worker records. Nobody knows what's happened to those babies. And nobody's asking any questions. Now that is in a government report. That's not an idle statement I'm making here. That's a fact. Up to 200 babies a year go missing from social work records in Britain. And that's why 2017 is going to be a big wake-up year for Britain. You're going to stand up. You're going to get off your backside. You're going to get out into the streets. You're going to have a national day of action or a national week of action or a national month of action. But we are going to get rights for our children. And we're going to remove the filth from power. Because until we remove them, then anything, you can forget any help that any politician might give you, you know. Because none of them are going to do a bloody thing while ever our country is being controlled by paedo-sadists, because that's what they are. And they are eating children. You know, now I'm in no doubt about it, really, because I do fully believe all the allegations that the children's make, precisely because of the level of cover-up that's gone on, and the lies, the blatant lies, the blatant neglect to follow due legal process and to give children even a modicum of justice. So, you know, what can I say? Until Britain starts caring about our children, caring about the next generation, appreciating that our children need protection and they need help to prevent crimes against them as well as protect them, and that when 72 children are named as other special children who've suffered the same abuse, go and check those children. And, you know, what can I say? If we can leave this, Britain, if we can ignore it, if we can ignore all the risks, the evidence, the facts, in order to put our faith in supposition by the police that it's all a pack of lies, so we won't bother even investigating. If that's the level of justice for Britain in 2016, 2014, 2015, 2016, if that's the level of justice Britain's had, then it's no wonder Jimmy Savile got away with his crimes and got a knighthood, is it? And there's going to be a lot more Jimmy Saviles, isn't there? Because let's face it, even medical evidence can be dismissed. Deep anal scarring, it's a large solid poo. You know, and I know I'm repeating myself, but I cannot stress enough how important it is that we stand up for the child. And as I say, all change in this world, it all starts at home. Change begins at home. At the moment, our society, you know, the powers that be want us all divided. They want us all focusing on immigrants or Muslims or the poor or the sick and disabled as criminals somehow. You know, they want to divide us. But we need to stand together now, to forget those divisions and stand together in support of our children's rights. And our children have a right to justice. And the only thing that is going to give our children the justice that they need are the EU Child Protection Directives and the UN Child Protection Directives. You know, and again, I don't care what you think of Europe. Not everything that's come out of Europe is bad. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is intelligent stuff. It's been put together by people who've really studied the issue of child sexual abuse in every detail. And these directives are designed to protect children and to prevent crimes against them. And as I say, a child's evidence is accepted. A child's testimony is evidence enough to start arrest criteria immediately. And medical evidence coupled with children's testimony is also even more valid reason to perform arrests and to investigate. You know, you can't dismiss the evidence on a slight possibility when the probability is that the medical evidence shows that what the children were saying was being done to them did actually happen. You know, and it's that injustice that myself and people like Sabine, and obviously the mum, I mean, goodness knows, I can't even imagine what she's still going through. You know, she's still living abroad, she's still in forced exile, because if she comes back, the family courts are going to arrest her for breaking their privacy rules. I mean, what do you think is more important here? The privacy of the case or getting justice for the children? Because that was the choice the mother had to make. Either shut your mouth or you risk going to jail in order to try your best to protect your children. What are you going to do? And unfortunately that is the case, that a lot of parents are forced to make that choice, and that's why 200 parents a year end up in prison, being imprisoned by the secret family courts. And, you know, there's no proper trial. They're just whisked away and it's all secret. They're not allowed to talk about the case. This is it's a dangerous, insidious thing. And people might think that, oh, it's never going to happen to me, it's never going to happen to me. But I tell you now, with 2,000 children a month being taken into state care, for the majority of them on grounds of a future emotional risk, because it's not like they're arresting criminals, real criminals that are involved in really abusing children. As the UN states, the arrest rates for crimes against children, real crimes against children in Britain, are extremely low. And they also state that the abusers are able to operate with impunity. You know, they're above the law. They operate without fear from arrest, which they would if they're a senior police officer, if they're head of the local Freemasons. And, you know, I'm sorry, Freemasons, but you're going to have to get involved in this as well. You're going to have to make your minds up as an organisation. Do you exist so you can fuck children and murder traffic babies and murder them? Is that why you exist as an organisation, so that your members can do that? Is that what the Freemasons is about? I want to know. Because, you know, I've I'm happy to tolerate the Freemasons, even though I'm like a woman, and I think it's wrong that you don't include women, because, you know, we live in an age of equality, supposedly, in Britain now. But still, you know, I'd be happy to let you carry on. But when it comes to you lot being involved in covering up for each other and procuring kids for each other in order to sexually abuse and murder them and even eat them, then I do question the Freemasons as an organisation in Britain, and I want to know what you are really about. Because as far as I knew, at the heart of the Freemasons was knowledge, understanding and an appreciation of the concept of God and what that really means, and honouring that there was some honour at the base there, and that within it was some kind of true patriarchal concern. But no, are you just an oligarchical concern only for male oligarchs? So, you know, I do ask the Freemasons, I challenge the Freemasons, clean yourselves out, you know, and the public will support you. I'll support you. I'll support the police. You know, I don't judge people because they're a police officer or they're a Freemason. I know the Freemasons. I've looked into the Freemasons, you know, and yeah, I've heard all the stuff David Icke said and other people, and I do appreciate what they're saying and the truth of a lot of that. But at the same time, I also understand the other side, that the Freemasons do a lot of good works. They help a lot of people. They help the community. They help the family members of their members, the widows and the children, the orphans. I know you do a lot of good work as well. So I'm appealing to the good among you, to the honest, the upright, the lawful, to help the public in removing this horror from our midst, because it is a horror that is operating at the heart of the very psychology that is causing all the imbalance and corruptions on our planet, because it's that psychology that has created and controls the money supply. And was it Rothschild said, I care not who runs the country's government so long as I have control of their money. And people will do anything for money, and people will do anything under threat of fear. So we're dealing with a very, very, very powerful force here. And if we allow the injustices that has happened in the HAMPSTEAD case to pass by unnoticed now, to just slip by, we just all ignore it, yeah. We'll accept the police report, you know, that it's extremely improbable. We'll just accept them. We won't listen to the UN, we won't listen to children's accounts, we won't bother with the medical evidence. We'll accept the police's report. The police that contain the very suspects who are implicated in abusing the children. We'll listen to them, won't we? Because they're not going to lie to us, are they? They've got nobody to protect, have they? They've got nobody breathing down their neck, saying, shut this case up now. We're going to ignore the fact that, you know, Canada made its bust in 2013. That isn't evidence. We'll ignore the Marantha Community Report as well that was handed into the UK Children's Commission in 2012, stating the facts of satanic abuse in Britain and how it's mostly done by organised groups of professionals, including quite a few members of Masonic orders and police. We'll just ignore that, won't we? Because none of that's true, you know, because there are no children at risk, are they? And the HAMPSTEAD children were lying, so, you know, we'll just leave them, we'll ignore them. And I say no, you know, we can't live with this level of suspicion, of lawful suspicion, because that's what I'm talking about here. You know, the 5 pillars of lawful judgment, okay, which are evidence, fact, motive, intent and probability. And all of those 5 pillars fully support police investigations into the Hampstead children's allegations, regardless of whether you believe them or not. Nonetheless, what the children say is evidence. There's facts and evidence presented there that need investigating, that need to be confirmed or disproven. And when you've got children who've said they've been given drugs and the police send the hair samples to be forensically tested, and then the forensic results have gone missing, that's more evidence again, isn't it? The very fact that they've gone missing. And it is outrageous. It's outrageous that a society cannot give an 8 and 9-year-old child the same credibility that police will give to a witness providing a vague tip-off about drugs. But a child talking about drugs is not even given the same credibility as a vague tip-off when that child is only 8 years old and is of a family that has, with his mum who has nothing to do with drugs. How could he know? How could he have been forced to be coached to say those things when you're talking about a child whose vocabulary is at such an age that he can't even remember the word sneeze? He has difficulty saying the word sneeze. He's trying to describe to the police officer what a sneeze is like, but he can't actually remember that word sneeze. And we're being told that he's been coached to talk about killing babies, trafficking babies, child pornography, taking drugs, alcohol, how it makes him feel. And as I say, when you look at the retraction interviews after, especially the little girl, her body language, her face, everything just shows that that child is under pure defeat. It's obvious of what she says at the end of a retraction interview, that she's been coerced. Because at the end of the retraction interview, she says outright, well, I was really scared that, I was going to get into a lot of trouble for saying all the things that I'd said before. And a little boy's repeating 7 times in a retraction interview that his dad kills babies, until the police reminds him that, it's okay. Are you sure it has really happened? Because, it's okay if it hasn't, as long as we talk about that now, okay. That again, what's that? A covert threat? Reminding the child that, look, if you keep saying your dad kills babies, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You might even go to prison. And the little boy suddenly, oh, no, he doesn't kill babies. It's just too obvious. It's too blatant. And if we let them get away with this, God help Britain. No, God's not going to be here to help Britain, because we will be totally run by devils. And the country is now, already. Because a High Court judge supported all those police negligences and ignorances. A High Court judge supported them. A High Court judge ignored the facts of the obvious negligence and coercion in the retractions. I mean, the fact that 2 child witnesses, age 8 and 9, 6 days after being taken away from their mother, suddenly, both those children suddenly decide to retract their allegations on the same day. It's outrageous. And I've lost faith in this country now, until we get rid of these people, until I see evidence that there's people in authority and there's people on the ground around me who are going to get incensed about this and really stand up for our children's rights. I don't feel like I'm living in a human society. I feel like I'm living on an alien planet, surrounded by aliens who are so strange as a species that they don't even care about their own children. That to me, I can't get my head around it. There's not one species on this planet that doesn't do its best really to look after its young and to make sure that enough of them survive and into healthy adulthood enough to raise their own young. And yet here we are as a supposedly intelligent species showing less care and concern to our children than the sparrows. A sparrow cares more for its young than what the population of Britain's sparrows care more for the young than what the British people do. You know, is that what I'm supposed to believe? And how can I not believe that when I've been fighting, not just me, but the mother and everybody else, Sabine, Nilu, so many people, Jake, who've been involved in fact campaigning for justice for the children here, you know. And as I say, now I do believe the children more and more and more as I've witnessed the levels of cover-up it goes. But at first, to me, it wasn't a matter of whether or not I believed the children. It was a matter or not of whether I believed those children had a right to justice and prompt, immediate police action to investigate their crimes, because I was not satisfied that no crime had been committed and that no children were at risk. And that's the whole point, isn't it, of having a law, is to protect people from crime and to also arrest criminals, to stop them from committing crimes or being a risk against other people. So, you know, this is where we're at. We're in a war. This is war now. We have to accept that when a whole establishment, the whole of the London authorities conspire to deny justice to children in order to protect lawfully suspected child sexual abusers, baby traffickers and murderers, that is war. We're dealing with terrorists. They're terrorists. Okay? So forget about the immigrants, forget about the Muslim threat, forget about everything, really. Because the enemy is within. And your kids need you, Britain. Our kids need us. The child needs us. And we do need to stand up for them. And, you know, until we do, forget about Jimmy Savile, you know. If you're not going to stand up for your kids and you're not going to stand up for their right to be treated as credible witnesses and that their statements are going to be evidence, then you are supporting Jimmy Savile. That is what you're doing. If you're not going to speak out, you're saying, Jimmy Savile, eat your fucking heart out. Because that's what he had. A fucking heart. A heart to fuck children. Okay? A heart of stone. And I want that heart gone. I want it removed from our society. I want our heart opened and fluid for our children. And everybody, every decent, human, humane, law-abiding citizen should want that too. And as I say, we're not going to get it until we speak out and until we demand action. You know, so I'm going to leave you the links, you know, to stop the family court secrecy. They've got to go. These family courts have got to go. The evil, evil courts. We want to end this secrecy around child abuse. You know, it's not a crime for to see an abused child's face. We want these child protection directives made Britons. We want police to start investigating These are the things that have got to happen. We want this child to be given the same police response as somebody who provides a vague tip-off to the police. Okay? And if the police had listened to the Hampstead children, we might have been looking at the largest child trafficking and child sexual abuse ring in UK history. Okay? Just as these have done in Canada. So that's all I've got to say. I wish everybody a happy new year. And as I say, I hope it will be. I hope it will be a happy new year for our children at long, long, long last. So thank you for listening. And please share this video. Play it to your friends, your family, your work colleagues. Talk about it. Talk about it. Don't be silenced anymore. Break the fear. Break the conspiracy of silence. Risk being judged negative because you've discussed something negative. Okay? Well, it's not negative to discuss children's rights. And whatever people say, I can't look into that. It upsets me too much. Get a backbone. Because little babies are having to live the reality of what you can't think about. So if you can't think about it, go away and shut your mouth, because you're hardly a human being if you cannot face what a child has to live in your own adult world. Okay? It's up to us to sort it out. If you're incapable of sorting it out, go away and shut your mouth. You know? What we need now is people who, alright, you don't want to talk about it, at least don't start slagging off the people who are talking about. Don't judge against the people who are talking about it. If you're too scared, or you're too emotionally weak to deal with the issue, you can at least still support. You can still sign a petition. You know, everybody's got to do something. So write to your MP, write to the MOJ, write to the family courts, have a local campaign, do what you can. But we have got to end this now, because we've got to stop it now, because it's got beyond critical mass. Britain is in crisis. Our children are in crisis. And with austerity biting ever, ever harder, that poverty, the levels of poverty in Britain right now, mean even more children are going to be at risk. And the pedo-sadists are having a field day. So it's time to put our feet down and say no is no, enough is enough, you know, and to kick these horrible, disgusting people out of power, and to start running our country as a humane and responsible, caring, compassionate society. You know, like I say, set up our own economy, establish a hemp economy, you know, make Britain work. Start producing new technology. Start living ecologically. You know, live instead of being operated and controlled like slaves. So they can wind the system down in order to bring in their so-called New World Order. You know, which, again, apparently is a conspiracy theory, but it's all right when George Bush Sr. says it. It's not a conspiracy then, is it? It's a promise. But if I say it, it's a conspiracy theory. Well, no, it ain't no theory. It's happening, and there's a conspiracy right now going on in Britain, and they're using the family courts and the whole establishment to protect the very worst kinds of child abusers that you can imagine, and they are living and working in Britain at the very highest echelons of UK authorities in Britain, Scotland, Ireland. It's time to get rid of them, and the time to act is now. Thank you.